All right, we're back with the Volunteer Park Criterium 2025. This has been one of my big goal races for the year since the winter, essentially. It is my team Taco Time's home race that we put on every year. It's also about a mile from my apartment, and it's my birthday weekend, and it was the state crit champs this year. So a lot of reasons that I put a lot of emphasis on this race. This video is starting, I want to say, about 20 minutes into the race. I started my GoPro late just to make sure that it would have enough battery to get to the finish. There are a couple of important things to note about this race and about this course, but first I'll go over how the race has gone so far. This is a combined Cat 4-5 field, and like I said, it is the state champs course. Ooh, looks like I'm putting in a tiny little effort on the right side here. So I have two teammates in this race, Mark and Lucas. Mark has a blue helmet. Lucas has, I believe, a black helmet and was just on screen a minute ago in that green and blue Taco Time kit. Mark has been sending attacks basically since the start of the race. His plan was to try to get a breakaway going and get it to stick as long as possible, and if he couldn't, attack again and try to get a different breakaway going. So he's been attacking pretty much from the gun over and over again. And that's not a bad idea on this course. The last couple years that we've ridden this race, it's an annual race, and the last couple years have had some kind of crummy weather. It's mid-June here in Seattle, and we have had some rain, and last year there was actually some hail during the women's P1-2 race, so that was kind of crazy. As you can see, though, the weather is a lot better this year, which is awesome. I'm stoked to have, a year of Volunteer Park where it's not going to be dominated by rain, and it's not just miserable racing and viewing conditions, obviously. But I will say last year, even the races that weren't in bad weather had significant breakaways. I think last year we ran, I don't know, something like 8 or 10 fields, and of those, the ones that I remember, all but one were won by some kind of breakaway, whether it was a solo rider or just kind of the strongest group. I don't know if this hill was sort of selective. This is me yelling at some of the other riders in the race, because my plan was about midpoint in this race, I was going to try to see if I could get a little group off the front. And so I suppose last lap was probably the start of that, and this lap I'm sort of continuing it. I'm trying to chirp at these guys. I know a bunch of these riders that I'm racing with, and see if any of them will take some pulls and see if we can at least thin out the group a little bit. This doesn't end up working, spoiler alert, but it's not that big of a deal. There's, something like 25 minutes left in the race at this point, so I'm not super concerned about that. I figured, I could try to send something, and then if it didn't work, I could just chillax and sit back down in the group. So this is kind of one of my couple of matches for this race. But yeah, we were very concerned about breakaways going. I spent the first half of this race trying to sit in the top 6 wheels or so as much as I could. Partially for comfort, especially through that turn there, and then through the little sort of S-bends at the bottom of this hill. It can be nice to be up near the front so that you can take the line that you want, but mostly so that I could keep an eye on the breakaways or attacks that were going. But again, spoiler alert, this race was not won by a breakaway this year. I think in the Cat 4-5 field, there are just a lot of guys this year that want to go in attacks, and so they all kind of neutralize each other when one guy goes. Even if they get a little gap, there's just too many guys that want to be in a breakaway that it's always going to be missing one of them, and they'll always just lead the group to surge and go back to that group. So I went over what my teammate Mark's plan was for this race, which was to basically attack from the gun, attack over and over and over again, and try and see if he could get a group off the front. I went over my plan, which was to monitor breakaways, monitor attacks, kind of the whole race, and maybe try to establish one myself about halfway through the race, which I think kind of just happened. And then if that didn't work, I was just going to sit in the group and watch my positioning and hope it comes down to a bunch sprint, because I'm pretty confident with my long attack, especially on a little hill like this. It's not a hard hill. You actually can slingshot pretty significantly up about half of it just from draft going down the downhill, but I feel pretty confident about my long efforts like that. And then my teammate Lucas, who right now is on the front, was kind of our wild card this race. He is an extremely strong sprinter, but when he showed up to the race day on Saturday morning, he told me he was feeling really pretty sick. He hadn't been able to do much intensity this week, and he really wasn't sure about his condition. It kind of sounded like he was on the verge of not racing, but I'm glad he raced. You know, it's good to have 3 teammates, and as you'll see, he ends up getting a very good result. So this is Lucas on the right side of the screen in the black helmet. We also had a couple of different teams out here that had, there weren't any teams that had 6 riders. There's Mark going on the right, both marking that attack, and I'm sure he's going to pull through after the corner to try and see if he can get something going. This was one of the many times that Mark attacked. There weren't a ton of teams in this race that had a bunch of teammates, but there were a couple teams that had a few guys. There's a couple of coalition riders on the right here, and those guys are pretty open to going in little breakaways, especially Brad, who's somewhere here. He's not on screen, but he's on a red bike. He's a tall guy, and he really likes to go in breakaways. And then Brian, who's on the right now, also really likes to mark those moves at the very least. ACT had a couple riders. That was that white jersey with the pink, and they were also kind of trying to get moves. And then I think there was a couple of Hagens-Berman guys, which was it's a dark blue kit. So it was a good field. I like it when there's more teams with more guys, because it's just a little less chaotic, and you can at least know what to expect. And then also it's just better racing, in my opinion, to have teams that have more than one guy. I didn't mention this teammate on the right here. This is my teammate Kyle. Kyle jumped into our race immediately after finishing the Masters race. I mean, literally like 5 or 10 minutes later. And so he didn't finish the 45-minute race for the Cat 4-5. Can't blame him. He literally had just come off doing the Masters race. One thing I'll say is I'm letting little gaps open up here on the descent and into those S-bends. I'm really not that concerned about it, because as you can see, you really can get a lot of draft and slingshot back up to the group here. And especially there's a couple of little sections down there where there's some moss on the inside of the road, and I just want to take the line that I want. And like I said, you know, very comfortably I'm back up in the group here. Here's Mark and Lucas right in front of me. One thing that I'll say is I was feeling really good this day. I didn't know how I was going to feel in general, and this course is very similar to Seward Park for those who are from Seattle or have seen my Seward Park videos, in that it doesn't have any real corners necessarily, and it has that punchy little hill in the middle of it, but for some reason it races very differently than Seward Park. The hill is just a little easier, there's a little more flat, and then there's this long sweeping turn that just kind of doesn't exist at Seward. But in general, it does race a little similarly to Seward Park. Like I said earlier, breakaways are very much a threat on this course, and they really kind of aren't at Seward in general. So, you know, it is quite different, despite the course itself being pretty similar. Anyway, what I was saying a minute ago was I didn't know how I was going to feel this day, but I ended up feeling really pretty good. Most laps, my max heart rate, you generally, at least for me, I was hitting my max heart rate not at the top of the hill, but when you turn that corner onto the start-finish straight, it's a false flat drag. It's maybe like 1.5% through the finish line. And so that's actually, in my opinion, the hardest part of the course is you go through the corner after the turn, and you really just have to push pretty hard to stay on the wheel in front of you. And I was hitting my max heart rate there at like 165, which is, on most laps, that was the maximum heart rate I had for the lap, I should say. That's not my max heart rate. My max heart rate on the day was, I think, 188 or 189. So that should give you a pretty good sense of, I was pretty comfortably, you know, in my low threshold, high tempo here. Yeah, I was at like 167 here, 169. So that's a little higher than the 165 I was thinking, but it's still like, this is very sustainable for me to go up. Oh, and this is even a lap where I'm moving up a little bit. It's very sustainable for me to hit 170, you know, for a couple seconds every lap. I was feeling generally very, very, very good. I want to talk about this weird sweeping right-hander for a second. It's a tiny bit sketchy just because, you know, it's a 4-5 race and dudes were kind of squeezing in, and then there just are some, like, blackberry brambles on the right here. So you really don't want to be too much on the inside there. Obviously, the inside is a good place to be in terms of just speed and comfort, but if you get forced in a little too much, you feel those bushes on the right. So that's a little tiny bit nasty. And then going down this hill, you might be able to see it's kind of right up here where there's some moss on the inside line. That wasn't super sketchy this year, but I'm a little... I have it stuck in my memory that when it has been rainy the last couple years, that can be really kind of slippery and really a little sketchy. So in my head, I think a little nervous about going around that corner at the bottom of that. I got more comfortable with it as the race went on, but it's just one of those things where, you know, your brain remembers, oh shit, that's a sketchy little part of the track. Anyway, I've been talking for way too long, and I'm gonna shut up for a couple minutes and just let the race play out. I don't remember anything super consequential happening in the next couple laps, but if it does, I will perk up. I'll also say this Medier rider right in front of me, this guy in the white kit, is also super strong. He was also one of those riders who's trying to get in a bunch of those moves as they go. And so there's just a lot of riders that want to be in attacks, and, you know, they all kind of make the group surge to shut down attacks. I think the most that any attack ever got, the most time in this entire race was maybe like 5 seconds, so it really was pretty negligible. Boy, I'm realizing as I'm watching this that they really saved the preems for later in the race, because there is just over 10 minutes of racing left, and they just did, I believe that's the third to last preem, because there's a $30 preem, and then there will be a $50 preem, and then there's a free race entry preem that is the last one. So there are 3 preems in the last, this will be 5 or 6 laps. I didn't see if it was 5 or 6 to go. It's probably one of those. Lucas just absolutely sending it down the descent. Lucas likes to descend. This is the thing about my teammate Lucas, is that he really likes to descend, and he is very comfortable moving his way up through the group, and specifically on a descent, no problem. So I thought that there was maybe a rider off the front. I thought there was someone still off the front, but this now looks like Lucas is maybe going for this preem. I don't know why I'm pushing quite as hard as I am. I think it's probably because I was thinking if that Hoggins guy catches him, then I'll re-attack over the top of him. But now I'm just kind of parking the bus a little bit because I see that no one's going to go catch Lucas. But yeah, he must have been hitting it for the preem here, because I guess I was wrong about the fact there was a rider. It must have been a lapped rider or something, or I'm just misremembering things. In the grand scheme of things, though, that really did not seem like that was too much work. See, this is what's funny. I would have been fine with that. I would have been fine with that little group that just went. It was a Coalition rider, an ACT rider, and I think maybe even a Hoggins rider. But then you get another Hoggins rider, ACT rider, and Coalition rider that surge really hard to try to not let that little group get off the front. I would have been totally fine with that. A group of 4 with one of my teammates in it, and some of the other teams represented, but their teammates instead surged to go chase them and just totally neutralize that little attack before it could even begin. It looks like Lucas probably was not pushing too hard through the preem to try to stay away, though, because he was the first rider that was brought back there. He looked like he was just soft pedaling. So yeah, I don't remember. I'll have to check with Lucas. He must have gotten that $30 preem, and I just totally didn't realize. So one thing I want to talk about is the sort of pinch points on this course. This is sort of the first one, is these S-bends. I started talking about it a little too late, because it's really from the bottom of the hill to here. You can kind of get squeezed or swarmed pretty easily. And then as you come up towards the top of the hill, and especially around the little bend at the top of the hill here, it can squeeze pretty hard as the riders who are on the left lines here go around the corner right about here. And last year I was in a pretty decent position on the last lap, but I got totally boxed in, and then riders came around me and squeezed me super hard. I actually kind of just got my wheel chopped on that corner, and I had to grab a big handful of brakes and killed like all my momentum, and I think I finished 8th after sprinting like from the corner to the line, but I just totally had no momentum, and it killed my ability to do well in that race. So this is another preem. This is a $50 preem. Yeah, so they were pretty back to back. $50 preem with 5 to go. So it'll be 4 to go when they're done with this one. I think there was 4 preems total in this race. So that means they did 1 in the first 32 or 33 minutes of the race, and 3 in the last 12 minutes of the race. So that's pretty fun. I thought it was interesting that Lucas obviously sent a little attack for that $30 preem, but in my opinion, people weren't really going for the preems in this race, which is super interesting. Again, if you compare it to Seward, someone's always going to be attacking hard for the preem at Seward, but people really weren't sending it super hard. Even I was thinking like, I could maybe go for it from back here. I'm moving up a little bit, and then I actually see my teammate Mark moving up on the left side. He's got a little bit more of an open line than me, and I think kind of the same thing as last one, which is maybe I'll just try to go with these guys, but I get totally stuck behind this rider. I did not think he was gonna, I thought he was gonna accelerate pretty hard, and he didn't, and instead I get totally swarmed, which is fine. I wasn't gonna go for that preem anyway. Mark ends up getting that $50 cash preem, though. That's him off the front there, and not to discredit Mark's effort, I'm sure he did some good watts there, but it really did seem like it wasn't that hard of an attack to go for that preem. Now what I'm a little worried about here is with these preems in the last 10 minutes, there's 4 laps to go, so probably 6 or 7 minutes basically to go. It can be a little dangerous if people just keep rolling through it. If there's 2 or 3 riders on Mark's wheel. So I'm trying to move up just so that I can keep an eye on what the situation is. I think right about here, I realize, okay, yeah, Mark's right up there on the front. It doesn't look like any little group went. And like I said, I'm never panicking on this descent because I know that you can totally slingshot back. So I did want to move up a little bit there. That was like a tiny bit of a panic moment just to make sure that I was aware of the race situation. But at this point, I'm pretty much good. But yeah, people weren't really going for the preem super hard. It just seemed like I feel a little silly in retrospect for not going for a couple of them and just trying to mop up some extra cash. But that being said, I do think Lucas must have gotten that $30 preem earlier, and Mark did get this $50 preem. So, the tacos were doing pretty good in the preems.
Inside, Hoggins. Thanks, mate.
So 3 to go. The whole group is together. At this point, obviously I want to still watch for attacks, but feeling pretty confident it's going to come down to some form of big group sprint. So my priority over the next 2 laps or so is just going to be to stay relatively, not like right at the back of the group. I don't want to be right at the front, but I want to be within view of the front so that going into the last lap, I'm able to be where I need to be. I felt like there was actually some pretty decent points to move up on the course, but my worry was that if you get stuck on that inside line up the hill like I did last year and then squeezed in that corner, you can just totally not have the chance to sprint in the first place. So I want to make sure that I can sit on Lucas's wheel here. I'm going to, I think, grab Lucas's wheel from my Mercedes buddy over here at some point and just park the bus on it for the next couple laps because I know that he'll have some decent positioning in the last lap. So, just chilling out. Again, I'm a little surprised that no one really sent something with like 3 or 2 to go. Actually, you know what? I say that. It looks like this is maybe Brad from Coalition is trying a little bit right here. That's a little late to attack there, I think. And then we've got these 2 Coalition riders on the front here. What I thought was going to happen here was that this rider in second wheel was going to just let his teammate's wheel go. I thought they were going to do what we call like a little reverse lead out and just let that gap open up. I think that could have been smart to maximize their team's chances. So that's actually why I'm a little bit outside to the right of Lucas's wheel. So this is the last preem. It's a $200 race registration for Tour de Bloom, I believe, for next year. And again, if you watch this, very often someone will go for these preems. Someone will think, I'm not gonna maybe be able to contest the sprint, but maybe I'll go get this $200 preem. But if I recall correctly, people just kind of rolled it across the line. So very strange on the preems. Even the cash ones, people just, weren't going super hard for. So I did tell Lucas that I was right on his wheel while actually being a little to the right, but I was trying to kind of protect that inside line a little bit because I knew if people came up around me and not him, I could get pinched in that corner right there. Something really weird happens right here. These 2 Coalition riders are on the front. One of them puts his hand out maybe to let his teammate know he's there and just almost crashes. That scared the shit out of me. Super glad he could keep it upright. And now here goes somebody. He went for it. He kind of sat up and looked around, so I don't know. Yeah, I guess he was going for the preem there. That was not an attack. In my head, I was thinking that was an attack. But yeah, like I said, it looked like he kind of just rolled it through. I'm sure he did a little 500-watt effort there, but that was very much not a sprint. It was basically uncontested. So I'm pretty happy with where I am right now. On the uphill on the last lap, I'm going to want to have the left side relatively open, because the right side is where you're more likely to get pinched there. Now, this is basically exactly where I want to be. I'm like, I don't know, 6 wheels from the front. Obviously, it's actually like 10 riders, but I'm like 5 or 6 wheels back from the front. But this I don't like quite as much, especially just because I'm not sure which of these riders is going to be a little faster, who's going to actually step on it up the hill. So I should have, in retrospect, fought for that positioning a little harder. I'm not worried here because the outside's open and then the door gets shut pretty hard. So I yell at this guy to push, and luckily he does. He starts going. I'm basically sprinting from the bottom of this hill here, coming around a bunch of riders, and then I do, unfortunately, pedal clip this corner. Right there. That was me pedal clipping the corner, trying to pedal through that long stretch. Lucas opens up his sprint super early. This dude can do like 1600 watts when he's fresh. I'm not sure that he did today, but he wins by a lot, a couple seconds there. And then I take second place for the
1-2, baby!
for the Taco Time 1-2. So pretty great result for both of us for our home race, and for I'm glad to have gotten a podium for my goal race for the year. Lucas, I'm sure, is trying not to puke. He doesn't even look back at me. Anyway, thanks for watching.